Welcome to the Versa Business Tips Podcast. I'm your host, founder and CEO of Versa Business Systems, Shaheen Mazloom. We are here with a guest today that owns a CPA firm who's also an expert in acquiring other companies in their industry. Cory, how you doing today, brother?
I'm doing great, Shaheen. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for joining us. So for those out there that don't know who you are, tell us a little bit about yourself and what your company does.
Sure. My name is Cory Gayman, part of JCG CPA firm. I started it back in 2014. I left the CPA firm I was working at and get my experience at and just decided I was going to do this on my own. So started it from the ground up. Along the way, we've acquired and we've grown naturally, and we've really honed those processes down so we can grow to what we are today. We have 6 physical offices, but now we're growing the virtual office even more. So things are looking up going forward.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I've got a similar story. I was in the industry before and decided to go out on my own. And, I think that's just the best way to do it, right? Like when you're trying to start from scratch, something new, I don't know how people make it. So you're approaching 10 years in business.
Yeah, it's coming up next year. Next year will be 10 years. So it's been exciting.
Very cool.
It's been a long ride.
Very cool. I can't remember what the exact statistics is, but it's something like 90% of businesses don't make it to 10 years.
Wow.
So that's very, very impressive.
I can believe it.
Awesome.
Seeing startups all the time. They just struggle in that first 3 years. And it's just always tough to get past it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You just got to not give up.
Right.
Right. I feel like a lot of people end up giving up right before they're about to see that success or go over that line.
That's right.
It's crazy. So, for those established businesses out there, tell us a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey. And, obviously were you a CPA before you started this firm?
Yes. Yeah. I became a CPA back in 2011. And I worked at a firm for 7 years before I was a CPA and during when I got it. That's where I got my experience. And I really built my firm sort of based on that, or at least based on that experience and tailored the way I wanted it to be.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So your firm obviously helps businesses, right? So what are some of the some of the main points that you guys cover when you're taking a look at a business and how you can help them? Yeah,
we do a lot of business coaching, but we also do a lot of simply preparation for the tax return. So in that business coaching sector, though, we want to help people with their liquidity. That's a big issue for people. Efficiencies. Sometimes just pointing out, you spent this on personal stuff and you spent this on business stuff, but used your business money. If we can point that out to them, they can see why they have a net income, but they feel like they have no cash. We can help them to organize that a little better and understand it better. Really, what I've found is just educating our clients on how this works and why it works and why it's important has really gone a long way to their success.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we believe the same thing, right? It's all about educating them because at the end of the day, right? Like the guy that owns the mechanic shop, he knows how to fix cars. The guy that owns the restaurant, he knows how to run a restaurant, but they don't understand the taxes and the accounting and the marketing and all those different things, that takes a business to really succeed. So, when you're looking at these different businesses, is there some some things that you're coming across often that businesses are struggling with?
It usually is just that basic organization and cash flow. Understanding that spending money on something to get a tax deduction also means you have to spend the money and it's got to come from somewhere. So let's make sure we do that efficiently and effectively. Let's put it in the right year for your tax deduction, but let's make sure you can also handle it cash flow wise and that it was a good business decision. So cash flow is probably the biggest. So just teaching people how to literally handle it and how to have themselves a paycheck as the owner, but then leaving enough money in the business to be able to run the business. So there's a good striking balance there. And then once we move to the next level, then we can get into efficiencies of, are your costs good? Are you getting good deals? Some analysis there where I've helped some businesses and I've referred some to other deeper dive firms that will help them really get the best out of their revenues.
Right. Now, so as far as deductions, when we have these conversations with some business owners, they're, not everybody realizes that, you can deduct. I mean, there's
Oh
so many
yeah,
things that
yeah,
you can deduct, right? Like,
right,
and there's so many things that, things keep changing, right? Like you used to be able to deduct some things that you can't now. And
right.
what are some common things that are tax deductible for businesses that most businesses aren't realizing,
Mhm.
and that you're able to, kind of educate them
Sure.
on that, and show them some tax
And it
savings?
depends on the type of entity they are. There are different
Right.
deductions and styles for each type. Whenever I start working with someone and then they're just brand new in business, they ask everything. They'll ask if are my supplies deductible, are my all of
Right.
these things that I think are pretty obvious, but it's okay. I tell
Right.
them if you had to buy it and you wouldn't have without the business, it's likely deductible. So let's start right there.
Right.
And you pay for it through the business, and then let's talk about it. But some of the things that are missed, you talk about mileage reimbursement for employees. That's potentially a good benefit for your employees and a deduction if it's appropriate. Of course, there's an analysis to do there. But then also
Right.
overnight stays if they travel, there's a good deduction there, a good repayment you can also give to your employees. But not just the employees. If you're a Schedule C sole proprietor, you can actually deduct that yourself as well if you stay overnight. And there's ways to do it,
Right.
even if you're an S corp or a C corp. But there's different tactics we need to employ. But those are some of the missed ones, some of the non-cash deductions that maybe they didn't spend money, but they exist. So that would be a few of those. One that's changed recently is the entertainment deduction. We used to be able to
Yeah.
deduct some entertainment for clients, and now we
Yeah.
can't. And
Yeah.
the meals deduction has adjusted a little bit the last couple of years, but still a good
Right.
deduction when it's appropriate.
Yeah. Now, is there any way around the entertainment? Because we used to write off a
Yeah.
ton of entertainment, right? Taking out clients
Yeah.
for dinners and drinks and things like that. Is there ways around those, or it's just really,
Yeah,
it's just not?
it's just they wanted to eliminate the entertainment altogether. So,
Right.
potentially you just adjust how you're presenting that. Maybe you sponsor an event instead, and you invite your clients to something like that. But you're the sponsor of the event. It's
Right.
more advertising. Obviously, that's probably more money. But there are
Right.
ways you could still do things like that without breaking the rules and while also taking care of your clients. Now, the meal itself is still deductible as long as it's not
Right.
exorbitant. You can't have too much wine and champagne on
Yeah.
there. And
$10,000 steaks
right,
painted in gold.
exactly. So
Yeah.
there are ways to get things done. Advertising is always deductible, and then sometimes you walk the line of charity versus advertising. But if there's a benefit to your company and they're saying your name, they're using your name, then it can usually be advertising. So it's kind of a shift
Right.
there.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, are there some common loopholes that are out there now that businesses should be aware of
Mhm.
as far as tax deductions go?
Yeah, one of the most recent confusing ones has been the home office deduction. It's been
Right,
in a heavy topic the last 2 years because of COVID, and we all went home and went to work, right? So the
right,
questions were, can I reimburse my employees for home deduction? Can they deduct it on their tax return? If maybe remember back in 2017 when Trump changed the tax code, they
right,
eliminated the unreimbursed employee expense. So if you're a W-2 employee, you can't write off anything unless that you spent on the business because you're a W-2 employee.
right,
However, the employers can reimburse you tax free and you don't have to pay taxes on it. You just have to convince your employer to reimburse you.
right,
But the home office falls under that quite a bit. So there were rules put in place that you could start reimbursing your employees somehow, in some way, for working from home. You could send, and you could also buy them supplies to work from home. But then even owners themselves can get a deduction for working from home, if appropriate, of
right.
course.
Yeah, yeah. When I worked for companies in the past, I worked from home and I was a
Yeah,
1099.
different.
So
Yep.
I remember, yeah, like back in the day, I could write off, I think it was, if I was not mistaken, I think it was
Mhm.
all of, because it was my office space,
Yeah.
right? Like that was my
Right.
office.
Right.
And yeah, those deductions are great, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what, I know you personally have experience with, you guys have been acquiring other
Right.
CPA
Right.
firms, right? Let's talk about that a little bit. At what point, like, when did you know you were ready to start acquiring other companies within your industry?
I consider myself an opportunist. So sometimes when you say, "Were you ready?" the timing's not always perfect, right? But the
Right.
opportunity presents itself, and you need to decide: Am I taking this opportunity or letting it go by? And that's
Right.
just another analysis in itself. I started out in a small town; it's my hometown, and then there was an individual retiring in the neighboring town, and he was just ready
Right.
to retire. He was doing the one man shop pretty well though, so which that's a model that I've shifted away from. But I
Right.
talked to him, had a great conversation with him, and he became a mentor of mine, even for several years, and still to this day, I can call him if I need
Very cool.
something. So
Right.
the, whenever I saw him and I realized that opportunity was there, I just had a discussion with him, and when I clicked with him, then we rolled forward. Um, what I learned along this process is the people really matter in the process for a CPA firm or a tax firm, because the clients trust that person so much that they're going to resist anybody else even talking to them. And so
Right.
if that person's a good person that you can get along with and that you can have a smooth transition, it can be a success. If not,
Yeah.
you might lose 50% of the clients just because, for
Hmm.
really no reason, no fault of your
Yeah.
own either, just because.
Right. That's wild, man. So, how many companies have you acquired now?
So we acquired, I believe it's 7 at the moment. A couple of them have just been an individual that merged in to the company,
Right.
right? And they still work for me.
Right.
Every situation has been very different.
Right. Right.
One of the common things that I found is key is how long will that person or individual be involved, to help that transition of clients. I did
Yeah.
one acquisition where they were an existing firm and I was acquiring one of their satellite offices. And
Uh huh.
it was tough because they continued operations. So really they weren't
Mm,
involved in our transition. It was more of a
right.
handoff
That makes
runaway
sense.
situation. They were a great firm and I
Yeah.
have a good relationship with them, but the clients, yeah, they didn't, it wasn't their favorite transition, let's say. We've
Right.
pulled through it and we have a great working relationship in that town now. But that one was difficult. So really
Yeah.
that
Yeah. I
person
bet.
sticking around for 2 years minimum, 5 to 7 if they want to, because I always need great employees. So,
Yeah.
and honestly, every one of them has been an individual that was running their firm basically by themselves with some support staff.
Right.
And that's a big job. And when
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
past 60, when you're even past 50, I'm almost 40 and I start to feel sometimes like there's a lot going on. But you start to
Right.
get tired and they just get tired. So if we can come in and take that administrative burden, and if we can say, look,
Yeah.
you take 2 or 3 months off in the summer and it's no big deal. Oh, it's
Right.
a whole new world for them. They can work double the years they thought they were going to be able to, just because that stress
Yeah.
is relieved.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it sounds like the first acquisition kind of an opportunity
Hmm.
just presented
Right.
itself. You took
Right.
advantage of it. You kind of got your teeth wet in how
Yeah.
that works. And then like did you start then looking for other places to
Yeah.
acquire, or did more opportunities just keep
It's
presenting
a
itself?
combination again. I did
Yeah.
seek out some, and I bought two through
Right.
a broker, and
Okay.
she was very great to work with here from Northwest Arkansas. But I bought two
Right.
through a broker, and after that, once I get into a town, especially a smaller town or a medium sized town, people kind of start to notice, and they're thinking about
Yeah.
retirement. So then they call me, and that's
Right.
a great thing. I've had
Oh
several
yeah.
of those happen, because then okay, they are ready. They've already went through
Right.
that process. You don't have to convince them
Right.
that they're ready, um,
Right.
because these people have worked this role for 30, 40 years. It does become their
Yeah.
baby, and that's
Right.
something to not take lightly, and to
Yeah.
walk with them through the process, not necessarily come in with a hammer and a hard negotiation. It's a collaboration.
Yeah.
It's not a hard negotiation.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like you said, it is their baby,
Right.
right? You
Right.
can't come in there and just blow everything up, right? So, when you're acquiring these companies, are you generally keeping the employees in place, or like
Mhm.
what changes are you making? Like, so for us, right, when we start acquiring companies, we would rather keep the employees, the good ones, right? We'll interview everybody, make sure they're the right fit for how we operate, and then just implement our advanced technology and our way of doing business, which has kept us from getting any bad reviews the whole time we've been in business, which nobody else can say. So we obviously want to, put our strengths into there, but we also want to, keep the people and not have to rebuild this company. Is that generally what you're doing as well? Like you're keeping everybody in place and just kind of implementing some of your processes, or how does that process work?
Yes, I always promise the owner that's retiring that I will give everyone a chance to work for us. And we do a quick interview process with them, but we give them an actual term of a chance and see if it's going to work, because we do need the employees. We need the relationships they have with the clients, again, to help that transition. What I've experienced and a little bit in rural Midwest America is that we've acquired some firms that are still doing things a very old way. And so they're very paper-based, very file cabinet-based. I think I own 150 file cabinets right now, and I barely use one. So it's just, that's what came with the territory. So adjusting the employees first and then the clients to new processes, sometimes we have to rip a Band-Aid off and do some quick, but we try to roll those things out slowly and get everybody on Team JCG. We want to be on our team so that we can move forward together. So the clients are presented with a united front. And I will say we've had some that didn't get on board, and usually they filter themselves out. But I've had to step in a handful of times to let someone go because they weren't able to get the vision. So end of the day, we do need them to come on board. We do need them to get in line with the vision. But we try to be understanding that this is a big change in their life. Let's move through this slowly and give them a chance.
Right. Definitely. So, when you're presenting, when you're going after acquiring a company, how does that process work? Like when you're looking for companies to acquire, are you going after like the companies that have been around a really long time? You're checking out their reputation and doing more research before approaching them? Or is it more of just like hey, would you be interested in this, and then doing the research?
Well, I'm definitely doing the research before approaching them, or if they've called us, then researching them first. If it's a different town and it's a new office, the demographics of that town, can they handle what we bring to the table? And what we do bring to the table is, I told you 7 locations, but we really act as one firm. So we all act remote. Even if we're sitting in an office, we act remote to other locations. And like I told you, that's the next growth frontier for us, is the virtual space. So I think I will slow down the physical location additions unless it's a great opportunity. But research the area, maybe try to find something out about the employees, see if it's just one guy that's running the show. Try to see if you think he's going to retire or she's going to retire soon, or if they want to stick around for several years and work. Just do a little recon and then go in and talk to them and ask some more very pointed questions. And lately I've been asking questions about their processes, about their prices, how paper-based they are. We want to know how quickly or how much effort it's going to take to absorb them into our system, because they need to get there eventually. We can't maintain the old way of doing things.
Right. Now, as far as these acquisitions go, so are you generally offering, like, are they doing like owner finance where you're going to pay them a percentage, or are you having to come out a large amount of capital up front?
It's definitely a combination and case by case basis. Occasionally they do need a large down payment. Obviously, I want to try to get to as little down as possible, because that helps me keep moving forward, potentially even acquire another one in a shorter time frame. If they are very close, I also am sensitive to the fact that some of them are significantly older, and I don't want to ask someone in their late 70s or 80s to give me a 10-year note. I mean, that's not reasonable, and they're just going to say no and find someone that'll give more upfront. Exactly. If there is someone that wants to work for me for 10 years, though, hey, we can work that out, and then we could pay that a little slower and do some owner finance there. But then we've had a few where we weren't sure the quality of the clients we were going to get. And so we've only offered, as clients come in and pay, we'll give you a percentage of that. And I'll do that for a term period, maybe 3 years. We'll give you 20%, 30%, whatever's appropriate for a set number of years. And then that'll have been your payout. And honestly, they benefit quite a bit more there because we're going to make the clients happier, probably charge more. So they'll probably make more anyway. So, but that's them taking a risk that their clients don't come.
Right. Yeah, I get that. So now when you're, before you actually close a deal to acquire a company, are you actually getting the opportunity to speak with the clients themselves about how receptive they are to, you potentially going in, acquiring this company and now becoming their CPA firm? Or is that kind of the risk you're taking?
Generally, no. However, as several of the retirees have told me, the clients are asking when I'm going to retire. They can see it in my hairline. They can see it on my face. They ask me every year.
Right.
So they kind of know something's coming. And occasionally I'll have someone say, I have talked to my 3 main clients. They're okay with the transition. They know it's coming. They know I'm going to stick around. So let's get something worked out. But generally, I don't get to see the client list at all. That's just the nature of the confidentiality that we have. In a CPA firm, and you have to get client approval for that first to disclose even that you're a client. So I generally don't get to see that list. And they run the risk that if they tell a client, the client might just jump ship immediately. They have nothing holding them here. They have no reason to have to stay. So it is a risk. And, when I started this process, I was told, expect to lose 25% just because. I've been very proud and fortunate that we have a much better retention rate than that. We're probably retaining 85 to 95% of the clients just for different reasons. We keep that retiree on as long as they can. We send out a letter from the retiree who is telling them in their voice on their letterhead, hey, this is happening. This is the next evolution of my career. Thank you for all of your past business. I'm going to usher you into this new firm. I'm here. I'm a resource. All your files are still here. So we try to make it as seamless and convenient for the clients as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I dealt with a situation when I first started this business where I had an accountant. She was great. And all of a sudden out of nowhere. So I think she got into a car accident and was unable to work. Like it was a really horrific thing. So like out of nowhere, now I no longer have this CPA. Mm-hmm. I'm scrambling, trying to find someone. Cause it was like, I think it was like towards the time I needed to get everything ready to file taxes and, so I'm scrambling, and then she did things one way and like nobody could understand it. And it was just like, it was painful. It was really,
and it
really
creates
painful.
Some anxiety in the clients as well, because those deadlines are real and they're coming. 100%. And we try to squash any anxiety possible. We want, when people come to us, that our process and our demeanor and our employees are calm and can help them to walk through it together, so that we can all get to the end together. So that's our goal.
Yeah. Absolutely. Now, so you said you've used a broker to acquire companies a couple of times, and then others you've done on your own. What would you say is the benefits to using a broker versus, kind of cold calling yourself?
Well, definitely they listed their firm with this broker. So you already know.
Okay. So their business is listed for sale. And so you're working with a broker to
they've listed it. They already, they want to sell, and they've already presented some, redacted and stuff, financials that you can see some key.
So you've already got
you can see some KPI already and some numbers, and you know how many employees are there. You can kind of cover a lot of the questions right off the bat. The downside is they're probably not as flexible on pricing or financing because they have to pay that broker. And I'm not sure the amount. Maybe it's 10%. I'm not sure. But they have to come up with a chunk of money to pay them. So that's the downside, but that's not even a big downside. I had a great experience with the broker that I used, and very low key, not pushy, but made sure that if she had an opportunity she thought I'd like, she would actually send to me. So, or if it fit my needs. So I had a good relationship with them.
Oh, cool. So would you say, I mean, in at least in your
Mm-hmm.
experience, were the companies that you acquired through the broker a better opportunity than the ones that you were able to find on your own, or not really
You
much of a
know,
difference, or how did that
it,
go?
maybe one of the differences is that you don't call. And this is an assumption on those retirees. I don't think they called the broker until they were just at the very end of stress
Ah,
level
right,
of I can't do this
right.
anymore.
Like I can't do this
Right.
no more.
If I cold call someone or go talk to them, they're starting to think about it maybe, but they're not at wit's end.
Right.
And
Yeah.
the conversations can be a little more pointed. You can get a few more years out of them. The age has
Right.
been different along the way, but I've seen some of the best ages for people at about 62 to 65. If it gets once they get over
Right.
65, you can really start to tell they're getting very stressed. They don't want to do this anymore. They may say they want to help with the transition, but it's difficult for them to do it because they're really, really burnt out.
Right.
So, and I've
Right.
acquired
Right.
several through the COVID years, and so that was had its own level of stress added on top of everything. Because
Right.
the benefit was everyone did change to my processes really fast because it had to.
Yeah.
So that was the
They had to.
benefit.
Right.
Well, some of the negative was that how do we work? How do we get this retiree who's always worked at his desk? Is he going to work from home now? He doesn't want to come in. He doesn't want to do meetings. We got to rip that band-aid off fast. So there was its own
Right.
struggles there.
Yeah, I totally get that. So now when you're approaching a company, so say you own, I don't know, a pizza
Yeah.
place, right? And you're approaching a company that you don't really, you don't know much about. Well, maybe you do know a little bit about. It's a good area. They get good traffic. The owner's a little older. How do you approach that conversation? Is it just a, hey, would you be
Mhm.
interested in, in
Yeah.
selling? And then just kind of going from there, or is there like a
Yeah. It
finesse
can be an
to it?
awkward conversation for sure, especially if they really get offended by the idea. That can happen too.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
think, yeah, I'm from smaller towns where I've done these things. And so if I haven't
Right.
been, led to them and I have just cold went in, I've just got to know them a little bit. In this
Right.
industry, the CPA industry, you can just kind of see it with age. And so
Right.
you kind of like, so it's easy to say, what's your plan? What's next for you? What are your goals? What do you want to get out and
Right.
do after you retire? And if they say, well, I
Right.
was thinking about listing this thing for sale and I want to go sailing or something like that. Well, okay, now you're in. Now you start talking about, well, let's
Right.
talk about that. So if it's just a store off the street, that's very tough. But you might be able to
Right.
pick up some indicators by do they seem super stressed? Do they seem like they are too busy, or you see mistakes being made that you maybe is just from having too much work? Occasionally, you can
Right.
acquire someone like that and streamline processes for them. Or sometimes, if I don't acquire them, they become a client of mine, and we can help them that way.
Right.
So you just try to read people, to read situations, and try to finesse your way into a conversation. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally get that. So now it made me think of something else. So when, would you recommend like going to, say, networking events in your industry or trade shows within your industry and kind of start
Mhm.
there with having those conversations for
Mhm.
acquisitions? Because I feel like, the easiest or best place to go would be
Right.
where a bunch of people within your industry are
Yeah.
hanging out and just kind of bounce around the
Yeah.
room to the older guys like, hey,
Right.
what do you guys do? Learn a little bit about their business. And, hey, would you be interested in, in selling your
Right.
company,
Right.
whatever.
It's a great idea. It's really probably my next level of what I want to do. So in this industry,
Right.
we work a lot. We work too much. I've
Yeah.
really promoted a work life balance structure change in our entire firm lately. But I say that
Great.
because a lot of CPAs don't do those things. We're naturally introverted, so that's definitely.
Right.
But what does fall in line is these CPE events. We have continuing education we have to go to, and a lot of times those
Right.
are in big events where everybody shows up. And yes, you can just start having talks with people around the water cooler, and
Right.
particularly the older ones that you think are potentially close to retirement. You just start talking to them, and it's amazing how
Right.
open people will be when you're talking about their baby. They love to talk about it.
Yeah.
They love to talk about their
Oh yeah.
business. And so you just
Yeah.
listen, and you listen for those indicators.
Right.
And if you see a hole in there, and if you're starting to like what they have to say, maybe just bring it up, float the
Yeah.
idea. And if it's a shot down, that's okay too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So would you say that acquiring companies within your industry is an easier way to scale a business rather than trying to do it on your own?
So easier from the fact that you can start working right away, yes. But if you start that way, you are just buying a job. So you
Oh yeah.
do need to build your team. You do need to build your
Oh yeah, I
system.
completely
And
agree.
then
Yeah.
hopefully once you get to a level where you don't have to do so much day to day, then you can start acquiring. With my first
Right.
acquisition, probably slightly premature, but it was such a good opportunity and a great guy that I wanted to move forward
Right.
with it. But I had a lot of hesitation on that. I was 5 years,
Mhm.
4 years into my firm when I did that. And
Right.
I did have some hesitation just because am I quite ready? Can I turn the reins over here to someone else? But I
Right.
pulled the trigger and we haven't looked back. But I would say you're buying a job and you're going to need to grow that one and to try to determine if you want to
Yeah.
do it again. For the guy
Right.
that's starting out. Now, if you can get in and get a base under you, get a couple employees to cover that work, then maybe that's the time to start looking out. And I think a good balance of natural growth and acquisition are both important.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree. I mean, like, I feel like you have to have one, obviously the experience, but you've got to have something that you can put into other businesses, similar to yours that are going to help them
Right,
grow and,
right,
and do better and make their employees happier or
right.
whatever it may be in order to make that a smooth transition. Because if you haven't figured that out for your own
Right.
business yet, you ain't ready to start acquiring other
Right.
companies yet,
Right. And
right?
you'll see that in your
Yeah.
employees. You can get testimonials from your own employees. I
Yeah.
actually was fortunate that some of my previous acquisitions, when they stayed on with me, they would talk to a new acquisition for me and with me. They'd go to the meeting with me and tell them about their
Right.
experience and how it worked out great for them. And then they
Right.
will see it in your employees if they visit your office. They'll see the culture. You've got to have that culture built. If you're
Yeah.
just going as hard as you can and you don't have some of these things already as a base, it's not going to work out quite
Yeah.
so well.
Yeah. 100%. So, man, it's great information, especially for me, because we're almost to
Yeah,
that stage where we're trying to start acquiring
awesome.
companies. And so what is the best piece of advice you can give to entrepreneurs in general that are trying to scale
Mm-hmm.
a business and start acquiring other companies?
So you hear that term a lot: scaling, economies of scale. You're going to cut out expenses. Those definitely are all going to happen. You're going to end up with a lot of extra stuff too. So when you're looking to scale, you do want to find companies that are, if not completely in line with your processes, at least they started that direction. I did
Right.
in my industry, we shifted them over, but it was difficult when I had a firm that was 100% paper and I was almost 100%
Right.
digital. That was a difficult transition, and we had to jump right into tax
I
season
bet.
that year and get stuff done. So we had to basically back ourselves back into the 19th century or the 20th century and work that way just for a few months, just so we get the job done.
Right.
So I would say look
Yeah.
at their processes and make sure they already sort of act like you. That's the best.
Right. And
That's
they're
the
not
best.
too
If they're
far in
too
left
far
field.
away
Right.
from how you do things, or if you get any pushback at the mention of how you do things, those
Right.
could be red flags of not to join up. And
Right.
especially if you're not going
Right.
to put your own management team in. If you're going to attempt
Right.
to acquire them and let them continue to run
And have
themselves,
them
you
manage
got
it.
them on the
Right.
same team. And if you get reluctance up front or
Yeah.
you see that they're just too different, I wouldn't do it.
Right. Okay. Awesome, man. Dude, it's been great talking to you. Get some great information. So if people want to reach out to you, I mean, I know you guys are starting to do the
Yeah,
remote thing. So you guys have clients all over the country right now, or are you
absolutely.
guys
And we
still
can do tax
mostly in
returns
the
in every
yeah?
state.
Awesome. Very cool. So how do people reach out to you? I'll make sure to put it
Sure.
in the
Yeah,
description.
you can find me on LinkedIn directly, and you can communicate with me there if that works, or you can go straight to our website at jcgcpafirm.com. and there's ways to connect with.
Awesome. So we'll put all that information in the description. And man, again, thanks for all that information. It's going to help me especially, and I'm sure it'll help a lot of our viewers as well. So I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks, Ian. I appreciate it. I had a lot of fun.